In the fall of 2015, the Ontario government introduced new legislation, Bill 132, aimed in part at addressing sexual harassment and sexual violence in the workplace. That legislation took effect on September 8, 2016, and resulted in changes to Ontario's Occupational Health and Safety Act. Since June of 2010, Ontario employers have been required to have in place policies and programs aimed at preventing workplace violence and workplace harassment. As a result of Bill 132, there are now additional obligations when it comes to the content of an employer's workplace harassment policy, as well as how they deal with claims of workplace harassment. For instance, the term sexual harassment must now be specifically defined and referenced in the employer's harassment policy. While it's clearly a type of workplace harassment, it now has to be set out specifically with its own definition. The legislation also makes it clear that a reasonable action by an employer or a supervisor relating to the management or direction of workers is not workplace harassment. Although it's not legally required, you may want to include that in your own harassment policy. There are also different obligations in terms of the program supporting an employer's harassment policy. For instance, the workplace harassment program needs to provide detailed information to workers about who they can complain to about harassment and how a complaint will be investigated. An employer is required to conduct an investigation into a complaint of workplace harassment that is, to use the words of the legislation, appropriate in the circumstances, and to report back to both the complainant and the individual who is the subject of the complaint in writing with those results. While not specifically defined, it's expected that an appropriate investigation is one where the party conducting it is neutral and impartial. Both parties, as well as any relevant witnesses, are interviewed and given the chance to give their version of events. The information disclosed in the course of the investigation is kept confidential and only disclosed to the extent necessary to conduct that investigation. And the investigator provides a written report outlining findings of fact and a conclusion as to whether or not workplace harassment occurred. Employers should understand that the Ministry of Labour has the power to order an employer to retain, at the employer's expense, an impartial and qualified person to conduct an investigation into an allegation of workplace harassment and then to provide a written report. Employers should bear this in mind when deciding how to conduct their own internal investigation, and particularly when deciding whether they have the internal resources to conduct an investigation that's fair, impartial, and appropriate in the circumstances. The team at Sherrard Kuzz has experience helping employers deal with all types of workplace harassment issues. We can work with you to update your policies to ensure they're compliant. We can support your organization in performing its own workplace investigations. Or in those situations where it just makes sense to have someone from outside your organization do the investigation, even without an order from the ministry, we can help there too. Finally, we can also help with the training your managers and supervisors may need to make sure that they know how to deal with workplace conflict before it rises to the level of a harassment complaint. Whatever your workplace needs may be, the team at Sherrard Kuzz is here to help. For more information, visit our website at sherrardkuzz.com. Subscribe to our Management Council newsletters, and follow us on Twitter at @Sherrard Kuzz.